Hello, my name is Patrick Finnegan and welcome to Shanty Shop Mechanic. On this episode I'm actually going to be going into a tiller which I have known nothing about. I bought it on an auction there not too long ago. It's the first and last bidder. Maybe that might be a bad thing, I don't know yet, but all I know is that it has great compression and that's really it. So hopefully I might actually have it running by the end of the day. So as a brief overview of this tiller, it's in actually quite good condition. Essentially it's all there, and anything that was missing was replaced by the previous owner. As I said, it got in an auction, so I don't really know who they are, but they did actually look after it quite a good bit. So if you look here, you can see where they actually labelled where throttles and the choke was meant to be, and here as well for the fuel cut-off, which is great. Makes my life a lot easier. Essentially it's an Iseki AC2. Again, I don't really know a whole lot about them, but I do quite like these vintage machines, so I thought I could try it out. I suspect that they had an issue with starting it. I'm pretty sure it might be to do with a spark, because if I look under here, it has a brand new spark plug in it. So it's actually a decent spark plug as well, so man of good taste anyway. So just bringing you around here, so all the cables seem to work as well. All the throttle cables, again, as I said last night, it did spray these with WD-40, so make my life somewhat easier. You can see here. But yeah, it's in very good condition, and hopefully I can make something of it. Right, so next on the agenda is checking for spark. So in order to get this done, I have to remove this part. It's actually not part of the fuel tank. This is kind of a 2/3 kind of deal, so it's flathead. I have a screw for each side, so try that now. Immediately you can see the difference in quality of this machine as opposed to something that's newer. Anyway. Alright. Hopefully they're just only 2 screws. Okay, pop it off. Right, so that said, here we go. You can see it there now. That's what's presenting the spark plug. So I'll get this off now in a minute and I'm back to you. So I have the plug off, and just to confirm my theory that it must have been very difficult to start, or they tried attempting it, is the new spark plug here. So you can see there's a little bit of oil on it, but there's no actual combustion or evidence of combustion happening, so that would be more of a charred, oily look rather than the wet, oily look from probably the unburned 2-stroke mix. So I'm just going to set this camera down and I'm going to check for spark, and of course put a bit of oil down the cylinder so I'm not turning it over needlessly without oil on the cylinder. So with the spark plug removed, I've obviously got no compression, so it should be able to spin over quickly. And I do have it hooked up to a spark plug tester which just lights off when I rotate it, or hopefully it does, and we'll see then. I would actually recommend, if you were going to do this yourself, I know people do have the spark plug out and they earth it against this or the block, but it's actually just safer to actually run it with the spark plug in and with the tester in. Ask me how I know. E.g. I set fire to a lawnmower that way because it was leaking. So for safety aspects and how cheap it is, it's actually quite a good investment anyway. So with no more stalling, I'll just give this a pull now and see if it lights off. Sorry. Right, okay, I can see that there is no spark, so I'd say I'm not quite sure if this thing is a plugs and points or magneto. Given the age of this thing, it might be plugs and points, so it might be a quick fix, or I could be looking at ordering the part itself. So okay, so from further inspection of the plug, I actually turned it over without the plug tester, and I do actually have a spark. I do still stand behind the idea of buying a plug tester, because it actually does give you that element or that extra step of safety, and it's actually more visual as well, so you don't have to, you know, go up to something that's reflective and see the spark or whatever. So I would recommend doing that. But anyway, I shall show you the healthy spark, which is just here, there where my thumb is. Yeah, so that's it. thankfully I don't have to go rooting with plugs and points or have to order a magneto. So I'll put this plug back in and we'll start going into the fuel aspect of this. And not to jinx myself, but hopefully it should run. Right, so moving on to the fuel aspect of this machine. As we have here with the fuel lines coming down from the tank and then following into some sort of banjo bolt and then following into sediment bowl. So I'm just going to quickly take off the sediment bowl, see if there's any gunk and junk, and most importantly to drain all this fuel because it does smell like paint thinner. So I can imagine it's the flash point isn't as good as it used to be. So I'll get cracking at that now. Okay, that's off. Should be. Okay, so if I bring this up closer, I'll just pour out this excess here. Yeah, it doesn't smell great at all. It smells like paint thinner, and as you can see, the sediment bowl doing its job there and just making sure that it doesn't go into the engine. And for whatever reason, it's still leaking. Okay, well, at least it's leaking into the towel, I guess. Just to do. Okay, that's better. It seems that there's quite a bit of petrol in this tank. I'm actually just going to remove it instead. It looks pretty easy anyway. It seems to be 2 bolts, and that's really what's holding it in, and then the fuel line. So I'll get that done now. I'll just remove those clips, see if this will break free. Okay, they seem to be pretty good anyway. Alright, and that probably calls for a size 10 now. Put that in there. It's actually quite nice and simply made, this machine. No plastic or any of that. So hopefully this just pops off. Yeah, I have to take the back panel off as well. Unfortunately, it just doesn't just slide off. So oops. Again, I'm kind of surprised that during the auction nobody seemed to bid on it when there was other garden equipment. Thought that this would be something interesting, but you don't really see them for sale all that much. So what are you binding against now? Or on the other side? Ah, yeah, that would make a difference. 2 10mm bolts there as well. So put you back there. Cool. Right, and hopefully moving these 2 bolts means that I'll actually be able to get the fuel tank off, and then I can actually give this a good cleaning, because actually it's not in bad condition at all. There's a bit of surface rust, which, you know, I guess that's going to happen given the age of this thing. I think this thing is from the 80s. I could judge it by a picture of the brochure I saw online. So, I mean, especially with the quality of petrol in Ireland anyway, I can only imagine why it's like that. So hopefully she pops off now. Oh yeah, she's loose now. So go around again, and we should see. Okay, it's hooked off. Right, so the only thing that's holding this on is this fuel line. Okay, so rather not do that, just take it off slowly and steadily. Could damage the fuel line, or worse, could be snap something off in the tank, but or the sediment bowl is. But I mean, this thing is actually built quite well, so should be fine. Okay, twist. There we go. Okay. So after cleaning it out with some new petrol and discarding it, I have this now, which is actually quite clean inside. Now, as you can see, there's a few specks here and there. I know the lighting isn't great, but as you can see, the lining of the tank is actually quite good, so it's fine. There's a few specks here and there, but besides, that's what the sediment bowl is for. So I'll clean it out as we go along if it does actually run. When looking at the inlet for the fuel to go in, it's directly over the sediment bowl, you can see there's quite a bit of gunk in there. You can kind of see it sitting there if it'll focus. Yeah, you can kind of see it there. So I have got these little bristles here that I'll just get rid of the bulk of that anyway. I know some of this is probably going to fall into the sediment bowl, but at least the sediment bowl is there to take it up. So I'm just going to use the thinnest bristle that I have, so I just don't, jam it all the dirt into the actual sediment bowl or clog it up. So hopefully I can get past the stuff that's sitting at the bottom half of the pipe and then kind of push it outwards. So I'll give that a go now. Yeah, just scrap what I just said. Be fine. Right. Well, it will be an improvement, I guess. So just get a cloth here. Clean this properly. Okay. So your friend would be here. I would be compressed air. Unfortunately, I just don't have that at the moment. I actually did have the canister, but a nozzle broke off it, so I need to get a new one replaced on it. So give that a go. Any excess will follow or will fall into this bowl, and then I'll just clean it out. So this machine also has a metal carb to it. It's not your typical gasket and diaphragm setup. So it does actually have a bowl at the bottom and has a 10mm bolt there, as you can see. So I'm going to drain that as well and see what the petrol looks like that, because I'm kind of contemplating trying to run it without having to clean it, but I mean, I probably will have to. It sounds like a bit like I'm trying to take a shortcut or something like that. So I'll drain it and see what I can do. See now what happens here. It's quite a difficult spot to get in. I'll get an angle on it. Spanner. Okay, broke it loose. Let's see what comes out. Ah, where'd you go? Okay, there you go. Bolt is there. Yeah, smells like paint thinner, alright. Not a whole lot's coming out of it, which is kind of a good thing, I guess. Yeah, I might just lift it up, see if there's anything kind of pop out of it. Yeah, nothing just yet, I don't think. No, nothing. Doesn't smell great either, so I can imagine the carb could be plugged up with varnishy petrol, could be gunky. Sometimes the petrol goes off and it kind of leaves a residue behind it, or the varnish, as I believe it's the ethanol that evaporates out of it or something like that, or it leaves the ethanol. Just can't really just think of it at the moment. Put that bolt back up, and I'm actually going to see if I can get this thing to pop off as well, to see what it sounds like. Air filter is off, and it just pops off with two clips either side, so quite handy. And as you can see, the choke lever working as it should, so they actually did label it quite nicely. So I'm going to put some petrol in it now. I have premix. It actually does call for a 25:1 ratio, so that's two of the little cartons or little packs of oil that pours into the 5-litre container. So two of them, and that's your 25:1 mix. A highly sophisticated petrol metering device here in my hand. I'm just going to pour a little bit into the barrel of carb and see if it pops off. Obviously wouldn't recommend doing this because it's exposed petrol, and if you have naked flame or any static or whatever, it might light up. So I avoid doing this. This is just for entertainment purposes, not educational. So just a little bit. Okay, that's more than a little bit, Patrick. Okay, I think some of that might have actually went in the barrel of it. I'll just clear up that little mess there that I made. And we shall see what happens. Make sure not to too many of those. Just put this back in. Don't worry, the jar is clean. And put the choke on, which is closed there, and light it off. Okay, pretty cool. Sounds pretty good too. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to probably just hook it up the fuel tank again, put that all up again, and see will it actually circulate some new petrol into it. So it might get away with it, might not. It's not a big deal if I have to clean out the carb, but I mean even better if I don't have to touch it and mess any gaskets or anything like that, because I can imagine it's not the easiest to find parts for this thing. Fuel tank's back on, and I will be changing the fuel lines because they're actually starting to get a bit too old. They're quite stiff. They're not cracked or leaking in any which way, but it would be just better to get them changed because I actually did shorten this one up and it's quite pinched. So they were very much cut to size on this thing. I'm not quite sure they're original, I wouldn't say so. Small engines that sit for a long period of time, especially with fuel in it. The fuel that's in the carb itself can go old, and what happens is there's ethanol in it, and that evaporates out and leaves a residue, and it actually attracts water into it, and it leaves gunk and water, and that's what can clog up these carburetors. And sometimes you can get away with a two-stroke because the oil in the fuel actually prevents the separation or the evaporation of the fuel components in it. So hopefully I might just be able to get around it with this. It seems to have let it flow in, it's flowed up, so it's got fresh petrol, so hopefully no excuses. And the choke, yeah, choke is on closed position, so we'll give it a whack. Ooh, okay, that was enthusiastic. I'll give it a slight bit of throttle. I might just take it off the choke and see what happens. I'm just going to leave it to idle. I don't want to rev it up because the engine's cold, but you can see it popping off there. Excellent. I'm going to set it down on the ground and see if we can get it to a drive. So it's been a great success so far with this machine. Thankfully it hasn't fought me anywhere really. I know that the carb is quite good because there seems to be no hesitation with the throttle, as you heard, and thankfully the kill switch which is here does actually work. I would recommend if you are going to start something up to make sure that the kill switch or whatever runs. So you can see that from the plug. So I'm going to give it another go. I know from inspecting the belt, which drives the actual blades, is actually quite cracked. So I'm not too concerned about it. I'm going to change it. Obviously, not the best idea to be putting on concrete, but I mean, I guess it does churn up stones in the ground too. So it should be fine. I just want to see what it does. So let's get cracking. So the next port of call is actually bringing it out to somewhere where I can actually test it out and see what it can actually do. Because I'm not quite sure if it can only do broken up ground, or it can actually break up the ground too, or it needs to be ploughed first. So I'll give that a go. calamity is struck with the Allied Secchi. I actually gave it a cheeky little run off camera, and it was going good for about 5 minutes. And now, when I engage the gears or the drive or the belt, it cuts out. So something's telling me that something might be stuck or might be pulley wheel or something like that. So I need to inspect that. And of course, foreshadowing, I should have known that. There was a bit of a leak from the bowl. It was because I pressed in or pushed in some sediment. So that's been cleared, as mentioned before, so I'll make sure to look out for that again. But it seems to be travelling quite well, other than this little issue. And in the previous clip you would have noticed me pull this lever and nothing happened, so I need to investigate that too. I'm not quite sure what it does. Might be a reverse gear. I think these have a reverse gear, but not too sure. Find out. Okay, we'll take this cover off now, see what's going on. Because it just seems to cut off just as soon as I try to engage this, so I'm not quite sure. Could be because of that. Loose. So I had to guess it must be a pulley wheel that's just stuck. Okay, that seems to be fine. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, that seems to move quite nicely actually. Can't explain that at all. That doesn't seem to do anything for that. Yeah. I'll have to get back to you on that one, guys. As you can see from here, there's terrible cracks on it, so definitely needs to be replaced. You can see more and more cracks as it bends outwards on that idle pulley wheel there. So I will need to change that soon, but for now it's fine. And I'll just explain to you as to what's happening. So I started up, runs perfectly as you saw before, and when I engage the drive, or when this tensions up like that, it just bogs down. Everything seems to be fine. Like this actually does spin a little bit, because that is the gears, and that's what there's going to be resistance, and then that's just another pulley wheel. As you can see, it does move too. So I'll just test on the table here and go from there. Okay, interesting. Seems to only want to misbehave when it's not on camera. So I believe there is an oil reservoir here as well, hence this little thing, this little plug. So I'm going to top that up and quickly Google it. If not, I'll just top it up with some 10W40 that I have lying around and go from there. I quickly noticed that this gearbox here had a fill and drain hole here. So as you can see, there's where you're meant to empty it, and then very nicely they've actually labeled it oil level here. So what I'm going to do is I've actually drained it out already, so I'm going to open this one up and then I'm just going to pour it in. I have my little can here of 10W40, but I've also added about a third of this is actually Lucas, so it should be pretty good. It should be better than what came out of it anyway. It was actually quite clean, so I'm quite confident that it'll be fine. Okay, oil fill bolt is out, and I'm going to start filling it up through the fill hole here. So it does take quite a bit. Okay, so it's beginning to pour out, which means that it's ready to rock. Any additional should be fine. As nice and clean. Make sure to clean up the actual pulley wheel itself. And I'm trying to balance this is quite an act. So make sure to clean off the pulley wheel that's below it, because if it don't, it'll just rub on the belt and do the opposite of what it's meant to actually do and actually have traction. Okay, you join me on day 2 of the tiller. I've brought it down to a field here that's actually just about to be reseeded, so it's roughly broken up, so this is really the natural environment for a tiller to begin with. So I haven't changed the belt or the fuel lines, a few other little things like that. However, when I do go to move it on to the next customer or somebody else, they will be done, and obviously I will be running it for about an hour, hour and a half off camera. So if there is any issues with it, they come up to me as opposed to the next person. So anyway, I'm going to do one row or two with this, just to give you some ideas as to how it works. You may have noticed in the previous clip that I was moving this around and nothing was happening. I got that to work, and it was actually the reverse, so quite a nice little feature for it. So without further ado, I'll get this thing cracking. So that's going to do it for today, and pretty much for this tiller as well. Let me know what you thought and how I can improve. I'm happy to know more how I can do it better. Maybe it's a little bit more detail as to what I did with the machine, just like getting it started, or if it's like you find the editing could have been a little bit better. More than happy to learn from people in that space anyway. So yeah, without further ado, thank you very much.